He was killed in a containment breach while he was transporting SCP-963 by hand. Somehow, his consciousness was kept in the amulet. When a maintenance crew was cleaning the rubble, a worker picked up the amulet and Dr. Bright's consciousness was effectively transferred into his body.
Bloop. So as y'all know, I love learning about SCP. I don't rush into it. I don't really dig into the wikis and stuff like that until I've kind of reacted to one, because I really like to get the story in video format first in animation, and it makes a lot more sense to me, and then I can go and kind of track all of the details about it. But this SCP, Dr. Bright, I actually learned about at a different place. So let me start from the beginning. A little while back, I created a TikTok account that I wanted to kind of play around with. I wanted to test the growth algorithm and stuff. You know how creators get. We just like to experiment with all kinds of stuff. Anyway, long story short, I ended up making a TikTok and I wanted to do just fun edits. I wanted to have some creative flexibility to just try different things, right? Because I like playing around with editing programs. So I decided to start doing edits for SCP. And I ended up starting one for SCP-1471, which we reacted to a little while back, the phone application and the entity Mallow. And the results were great. I got a lot of feedback on it. I had a lot of growth from it. A lot of people followed me and stuff like that. And it was a really, really fun project, so I kept on it. Well, one of these SCP edits that I did, a lot of people were alerting someone named Dr. Bright, which was a user on TikTok. Well, it turns out the user Dr. Bright on TikTok does cosplay for the SCP that we're reacting to today, which is kind of a crazy story. I'm not going to spoil anything. We'll talk about it after the actual reaction. But SCP Animated, Tales from the Foundation, did an animation on the origin of Dr. Bright's story, and we're going to react to it today. Make sure you go over to their channel and subscribe, guys. Hit the notification bell, and if you like reaction videos, make sure to subscribe to this channel as well. Let's get into the animation. All right. Closed circuit security stuff?
You won't need to come in here often, but you may need to retrieve amnestics or other substances to transport to other locations, so your keycard will give you access to this room.
All right, a little facility tour. Is he the doctor? He looks new.
Is this where you make the amnestics?
I don't personally, but yes.
It's amnestics.
That sealed room over there is where they're produced. It takes weeks to retrieve the materials necessary, and the process is very delicate, so it's closed off from the rest of the lab.
What kind of materials go in there? Where do you get them from?
Most of that is classified. As I've said already, asking a lot of questions isn't a productive use of your time in the Foundation. And it would do
me well to stick to my job description.
Know your role, bruh.
It's just so exciting. It's so cool that you get to work with weird objects and creatures.
That would be cool.
I've been obsessed with paranormal things since I was a kid.
Yes, you've said so twice already, Gustav.
Oh,
This
Gustav,
job can be dangerous no matter how low-ranking you are. We expose ourselves to the most hazardous phenomena in the world so that everyone else can be blissfully ignorant of them. You've entered our world
It's true,
now,
like us.
and chances are you won't get to go back to the old one.
Oh, yeah.
I would never want to.
Can't.
This is where I want to be.
It's like a game.
I'm telling you, Dr. Buck. I'll be so loyal, and...
Oh,
hey, that's Dr. Bright.
It's good to see you on your feet again.
That's the amulet.
I don't know what you're talking about, Amelia. As far as I'm aware, I was never off them. Who's this kid?
This is Gustav. He is a new research assistant in training.
I see. Well, he looks pale and unimportant. He'll fit in just fine.
Pale and unimportant? God.
Don't worry about him or his comments. He's got reasons for being so bitter. Not excuses exactly, but reasons.
Reasons.
Was that Dr. Bright?
You know about Dr. Bright?
Of course. He's wearing that amulet.
How do you know about that? You haven't been here long enough to...
There's this internet forum I go on sometimes. He posts stuff occasionally, and people are really big fans of his.
Well, I'm sure he's revealed no confidential information, but I may have to speak to him about participating in online forums that discuss SCPs.
So, is it true? Is he, like, in the amulet?
Kind of.
You can't go talking about this stuff to people outside the Foundation. You know that, right?
Yeah, I got the big orientation full of threats already.
Then, yes. I can tell you that his consciousness is trapped in SCP-963.
And is it true his dad is on the O5 Council?
He isn't anymore, but
I'm
how do
not
you know
familiar with
so
that.
much?
I'm eager to learn.
I'm starting to doubt whether you were a good hire. Seriously, you have to keep your questions to yourself around here. You're going to attract the wrong kind of attention.
Wonder what the cameras.
I've known more than a few good researchers who have been done in by
Interesting.
their curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just this once. Would you please tell me about Dr. Bright? You said if I had any questions, I should ask you.
Well,
Fine. Jack Bright has been tested perhaps more than anyone at the Foundation today. He lost his life and most of his family because of incidents related to SCPs.
What? Like stuff was done on purpose?
his whole family
Did they
actually
experiment with him and
was
his family?
SCP.
No,
It's crazy.
not exactly. I've never spoken to him about it personally, but it's fairly well known what happened to him. He was killed in a containment breach while he was transporting SCP-963 by hand. Somehow, during or after his death, his consciousness was kept in the amulet. A few days later, when a maintenance crew was cleaning the rubble, a worker picked up the amulet and Dr. Bright's consciousness was effectively transferred into his body.
Bloop.
Whoa. So is he still in the amulet, or is he in the maintenance worker?
It's kind of complicated, but
So, if you're not following by now, Dr. Bright's immortality is not necessarily immortal. Like, his consciousness is immortal, and it just gets transported to any person around the amulet after Dr. Bright dies, and it gets transferred to the amulet again. So it's sort of like it carries Dr. Bright's consciousness around, and wherever the amulet is, he is.
he's in the amulet and he has to switch bodies every 30 days. Otherwise, that body will retain a copy of his consciousness, and whenever the amulet gets given to someone new, there would be 2 Dr. Brights.
Oh,
We've instated
now that I
several
didn't know.
measures to ensure that doesn't happen. He hates it, though. He's been trying to separate his consciousness from the amulet for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
That is seriously freaky. I guess that could happen to anyone. As long as you're in a building with SCPs, you're at risk.
That's right.
Exactly. That's what I've been trying to tell you. Look, you seem nice, but you can't approach this job with that fanboy kind of energy. You won't get anyone's respect that way. In fact, you might make people think you're not taking it seriously and you could be reported, or worse.
Yeah, I mean, yes, ma'am. I understand. But I have a few more questions, if that's all right.
You might as well get it all out.
That sounded like an honest accident. If I was him, I wouldn't be bitter about it. What else happened to Dr. Bright?
I believe his frustration is more related to his family. The most outrageous thing, in my opinion, is what happened to his brother. And if you really want to know Jack Bright, that is the story that'll tell you the most about his character and values. I mean, he has some bad days, sure. But
Mhm.
overall, I would say that he's one of the most dedicated, enthusiastic, and brilliant researchers in the Foundation.
That's cool.
Wow, I absolutely believe you. I mean, based on the little bit that I know about him. So what happened to his brother?
He's an SCP too.
That's right.
I'm not sure if he was just born like that or if something happened to him, but he has the ability to heal other people's injuries just by touching them.
That's crazy, man.
That's incredible. He must be valuable around here.
Can you imagine if there was a person like that IRL? So the thing about SCP, what's crazy is that if somebody or something is found with abilities in general, they get used, right? They get used by the Foundation. And if that would be IRL, if it would be real, this person would literally just be, he'd be enslaved, right? Like, there's no way that the world controlling organizations would not capitalize on something like this. It's terrible to know that humans are like this, but like there's no way he'd be able to have free will. There's just none. That's our society in a nutshell. Isn't that weird?
He is. But every time he heals someone, he takes on their ailment himself. So if he touches someone with cancer, he grows tumors on his body.
Oh, well, that sucks.
Yeah.
Does he still do it?
Bad.
Yes, he's forced to. The Foundation doesn't have many resources that are able to do what he can.
So he's basically enslaved by the Foundation. That's messed up.
Yep.
How old is he?
Age is a complicated thing with SCP-590 because he doesn't appear to age normally, and he hasn't got the mental capacity you would expect him to.
So they're going to tell you about this, but if he takes on the ailments of the people he heals, what do you think would happen if he would heal somebody with a mental ailment?
Why not? Is it a side effect of his healing ability or something?
Not quite. See, Dr. Bright was put in a difficult position when he discovered the Foundation was going to imprison his brother and use him to heal their agents, putting him through involuntary pain. 590 was bedridden and put on life support because of all the ailments he had accumulated at that point. Protocols say that he is to be kept in his SCP living space at all times. He's not allowed to leave for any reason, and the only entertainment he has is kids' television shows. His food is very restricted, too. He doesn't even have a name. Everyone is required to call him 590.
So you see how Dr. Bright's sad about this. His brother's being tortured, okay? Technically, because he just takes on all the ailments that he does. So in an attempt to relieve him of his pain, Dr. Bright does something crazy.
Shit. That sucks. So did Dr. Bright try to break him out?
No, he couldn't betray the Foundation. Instead, he thought outside the box and used his brother's ability to his advantage. See, his healing ability works on mental illnesses too, so Dr. Bright submitted an order for him to heal several cases of mental illness until his mental capacity was so reduced that he didn't realize he was in any pain.
There you go.
Wow.
Crazy,
that's incredible. I see why you would call him a genius. But that's kind of surprising. He seemed so callous just now. I wouldn't expect him to be so sympathetic to an SCP, even if it was his brother.
He's a complex man, Gustav.
Mm-hmm.
You're right, he can be callous, reckless, and sometimes it seems he doesn't value human life. It's definitely what he's known for, at least. But he also has a decent capacity for empathy.
Of course, you're right. Maybe one day I'll get to know him and I'll understand him better.
Maybe.
Is that all? Him and his brother were victimized by the Foundation?
Careful with your wording. Nobody was victimized by anyone. God, for someone who seems to know so much, you sure act carelessly. But no, there's actually more, a lot more.
Like what?
Okay, this is the last thing I'll tell you about Dr. Bright. I don't have time to sit around gossiping all day, so here it is. When Jack was very young, his father was a junior researcher and his mother was a medical assistant. His mother gave birth to a stillborn baby girl, and his father refused to give up on the baby. He used any SCPs he had access to try to bring the baby back to life, including his own son, 590. And it worked. The girl lived. But she was taken into custody by the Foundation for observation. Eventually, she was assigned an SCP designation. They quickly realized that she had recuperative abilities. She could heal at 5 times the speed of a normal person.
Crazy, huh?
And she also never stopped growing. Though the growth of her intelligence stagnated quite early, she's about 10 feet tall now, if I recall correctly. Her size has presented all kinds of health issues.
Of
And to the
course.
Foundation's credit, they've done their best to keep her alive. She's got an artificial heart because her natural one was failing to pump blood to all her extremities. And she has extensive braces to make up for weaknesses in bone structure and muscle mass.
That's nuts, huh?
She's even given physical therapy to try to keep her body in a relatively healthy condition. Her father, Dr. Bright's father, wasn't happy with it, though. Over the course of his career, he put in many requests to have her SCP designation removed and allow her to return home. They were all denied.
Of course. That's how the
Even when he was
Foundation
in
does.
05, the rest of the council wouldn't yield.
Dang.
They said she was never truly his daughter, and threatened to remove him from his seat if he made another request.
Wow.
Oh, so he was an 05.
Yes, he was 0512, and the first 05 ever to retire and live a normal life once his career as the Foundation was over.
I thought you're in for life once you join.
Well, Gustav, if you rise through the ranks and become an 05, maybe the rules will be slightly different for you.
There you go.
But we all make sacrifices. I would argue that the Bright family is among those who've made the most.
Yeah, no kidding. They didn't know about any of this on the forum. I wonder what they would say. Not that I would. I mean, I know I can't tell anyone.
Right.
Right. I'm sure I've made that point clear. But as far as your curiosity goes, I've had similar thoughts. His father, AdminBright, decided to have a family despite the risks of hurting or losing them. He and his wife are just fine, I assume, but they're among the lucky few. And all 3 of his children are SCPs now, and they've all suffered for it.
Yep.
I could never have a family knowing that I might bring that upon them. Telling these stories to Foundation employees gives them a chance to consider that before they endanger themselves and the people around them.
That's true. But I think what happened to the Brights might be good in a way.
What?
It's brave of him. To have the courage to love, I mean, just look at this place. Barren walls, fluorescent lights, windows separating people.
It's kind of brave for anybody,
It's
though,
easy
right?
to get lost in all the bleakness. I know I've annoyed you with my overenthusiasm, and I respect your advice as someone who's clearly successful in the Foundation. But maybe you should consider what I have to gain from loving what I do. Love gives people a lot of power, and I think it's more important here than it is anywhere else. If we weren't brave enough to love, then what else would we have?
Wow. Cool, that's some deep stuff, bruh. There's not a whole bunch for me to even explain that wasn't explained already that I knew, you know? His whole family was victimized by the Foundation, which technically they were. Even though they said it wasn't victimizing. No, they were victimized. But, I mean, kind of like I talked about earlier, like these... If these phenomenon were actually real, some organization would capitalize and enslave them, you know, for their properties to study them. They'd be lab rats at the very least. We see that in everyday society in certain aspects, you know, and it's crazy to think that, you know. So if you out there and you got superpowers, don't tell nobody about them, okay? That's why Superman hid in the phone booth before he changed, because he knew he would be targeted if they knew who he really was. And every other superhero and supervillain, I suppose, too. But I think it's a really, really good story. If you want to see more about Dr. Bright, you should definitely check out the SCP Foundation's wiki. They have some good story, and they go into a little bit more depth than the animation did, of course. It's kind of like reading a book versus watching a movie, but it was really good. And if you want just more SCP animations, go check out the Foundation's channel. The link will be in the description as well. And if you like that kind of stuff, you should subscribe to him and me. I got some more SCP videos right here for you to check out if you like this type of content. Thanks so much for watching, guys. As always, this is Zueljin signing off, and we'll see you next time.